A lot of Christians have heard of the Great Commission. Matthew 28:19 says, "Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit." But many Christians don't know that the fulfillment of the Great Commission is actually recorded in Revelation 7:9. It says, "After this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and in front of the Lamb." We believe that the God we serve is worthy of praise from every nation. And we believe that they come as a reward for the sacrifice that Jesus made. It says in Revelation 5:9, "With your blood you purchased for God members of every tribe and language and people and nation." But still today there are over 3 billion people in the world that have not heard of the gospel of Jesus. Most of them live in a small geographical window where less than 5% of missionaries ever go, and less than 1% of missionary funding ever goes.
Romans 10, verse 14 says, "How then can they call on the one of whom they've not believed? How can they believe in the one of whom they've not heard? And how can they hear without someone preaching to them? How can anyone preach unless they're sent?"
About 2 years ago, we started wrestling with this emotion that can only be described as holy discontentment. We knew there had to be more to this life than the American dream and the version of Christianity that we'd always known. We began praying through it, and God started to show us glimpses of more. We had done some traveling, and we were able to see people around the world that had significantly less in terms of wealth, but significantly more in terms of peace and joy. And pretty soon the American dream really began to lose its luster for us. I started to feel like God wanted us to sell our house, even though we'd only been there for a little less than 3 years, which I was okay with. I said, "God, I have no problem selling the house, but you've got to convince him, because I'm not going to be able to do that."
And only 3 years earlier, we moved in. And when we moved in, I said, "I hope you like it, because we're never moving again. So don't ever say what you'll never do, because God might just throw a monkey wrench in the situation."
Yep.
So she approaches me and says, "Hey, let's read a book together," which she'd never suggested before. I said, "Sure, we're going on vacation. What do you want to read?" And she says, "Let's read this book called Radical by David Platt." So here we are on vacation. I'm going through the book, and it just opens your eyes to what's going on in the rest of the world. The 26,000 kids that die every day because they don't have access to basic medical care, clean drinking water, or just food. And it's like, what are we doing about it? And then I read chapter 6 on materialism, and it just really kind of cut to the heart. And I remember I came downstairs, and Nicole hadn't gotten that far in the book yet, and she said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, I think it's really good, and I think we should sell the house."
So we put our house on the market the next day. Over the course of the year that it took for us to sell the house, God taught us a lot about patience and surrender and trusting in His timing. There were times in the waiting where we wondered why it wasn't selling. And people would say things like, "Maybe God is just blessing you for your obedience and allowing you to stay in your house." But at that point, we were well beyond the point of being obedient just to be obedient. We wanted to be out of the house. We wanted to downsize and be able to free up more finances to give to the things that we saw God doing around the world. At the same time, as we were trying to downsize, one of my best friends was preparing to move overseas with her family. And so as she was doing yard sales and trying to sell her house, we were doing the same thing, but they were doing it for the purpose of going overseas long term. The last month that they were here in the States, they had sold their house, and so they were kind of bouncing around between different people's basements and guest rooms. and they didn't really have a place to call their own. And it was a challenging time for them, for sure. And just the logistical part of not having their own space in order to process what was happening added another element of difficulty to that month for them. At the same time, we had other missionary families and friends that were coming home just temporarily for support raising or visa requirements, and they were kind of going through the same thing. They didn't have a place to come home to and a place to stay while they were here, even though they would come for 4 to 6 weeks at a time, and they were still going from guest room to basement to all these different places that weren't really home. So as we had started to look for a new house, we knew we wanted one that we could use for ministry purposes. We really felt like God was telling us that we could use everything He's blessed us with for His purposes. So in that mindset, we thought, well, what if we had a missionary house somehow attached to our house that would be their own space? They could be with us, but be very separate, that we could have our own family space too. But just a place where they could come and rest.
It was frustrating at times. It took 10 months for us to even get a contract on the house. But God's timing's perfect, and we ended up getting the closing. It was a year to the day that we had made the decision to downsize, and Nicole had blogged about the reasons that we decided to downsize so that we could use our resources more effectively for God's kingdom, support missionaries. And so God just continued to show up in the process and confirm that this was in fact what He wanted us to do. And He worked out every single financial detail in a way that we could never have done on our own. So it really was a faith builder, and it was just amazing to see how God confirmed that this was His plan for us.
Yeah, absolutely. After lots of ups and downs as the home buying process goes, God brought us to this house. The first time we came to see it with our agent, she said, "So, what do you guys think about the house?" And Parker turned to me and said, "You love it, don't you?" I said, "I do. I love it." There were a lot of things I loved about this house, but one of the things was the dining room was huge, and we love to have people, we love to feed people. And so we knew that we could get a table in our dining room that could fit 2 families. There's also, and probably our favorite thing about the house, is this huge detached garage. And I know that seems like a weird thing to be the favorite thing about the house, but we saw it and we just knew that it was perfect for our missionary house. And so the one day I had a friend over here, this was when we were still under contract, and I was showing her around and telling her what we wanted to do with the detached garage and how we wanted to make it into a missionary house. And she said, "Oh, like Elisha." And I said, "What do you mean, like Elisha?" She said, "Isn't there a story somewhere in the Old Testament that talks about Elisha in a home or something?" I said, "I have no idea." So I looked it up, and it turns out in 2 Kings 4, 8 through 10, there's a story about the prophet Elisha. One day Elisha went to Shunem, and a woman was there who urged him to stay for a meal. I'm always urging people to stay for meals, aren't I?
We do love to eat.
It's kind of what we do. So whenever he came by, he stopped there to eat. She said to her husband, "I know that this man who often comes our way is a holy man of God. Let's make a small room on the roof and put in it a bed and a table, a chair and a lamp for him. Then he can stay there whenever he comes to us." So it was perfect. It's Elisha's house. So I know right now it just looks like a messy garage with way too much stuff in it. But we see so much more when we look at this house, and we have since day one. We see it having 2 bedrooms and a small kitchen and a full bathroom to accommodate missionary families for whenever they're here to stay with us.
We've dedicated this house to the Lord, Elisha's house. It will never be used for us and our purposes. It will never be rented out or anything like that. We've decided to use it exclusively for missionaries and to further God's kingdom.
That's right. And we want to open it up to missionaries year-round for free so that they can have a place to call their own. So we really feel like we've been blessed with what we have, and we feel like God's calling us to use this to bless others. And so we want to have this available for missionaries and their families to stay for free year-round when they're home on leave. In Psalm 67, it says, "May God be gracious to us and bless us and make his face shine on us, so that your ways may be known on earth, your salvation among all the nations." And that's what we really want to be a part of. And so we know that a lot of you have asked how you can help and how you can be involved too. So we've set up a website, elishashouse.com, and we would love for you to partner with us financially to complete this massive renovation project that we're taking on, but then also monthly financial support to help the missionaries that come in to stay with us. So we'd love for you to visit the website, elishashouse.com, and you can learn more about ways that you can donate, including if you have skills that might be helpful, like plumbing or electrician or all that kind of skills. You can donate those as well through the website.
God so loved the world, he gave his one and only Son. John 3:16.
Good job! That was perfect.